some pages. Action potential. You're good to go.
You live from the Kennett Square office, and really excited about today's Lunch and Learn, as this is a topic that hits particularly close to home for me as a mother of 3 boys. This one is titled Back to School Basics, since we all know certainly this year's school is looking a little bit different given the coronavirus pandemic. But with that being said, we're going to make the best of a virtual school situation, and in today's presentation, I'm going to share with you some tips about improving the desk setup and workspace setup for your young one, talk about some postural risks for them, as well as make some recommendations for some easy kid-friendly stretches that can help to keep their body healthy, safe, and pain-free so that they can remain focused and zoom their way to a better tomorrow. See what I did there? All right, so in today's presentation, we'll start by highlighting some tips for proper homeschool desk setup. We have a complimentary blog on this topic on our website, but this way we can just talk about some of the general recommendations. Ironically, these are the same recommendations that I make for those who work at a desk that are employees at a business. So really, it's just taking those recommendations and boiling them down to a slightly smaller scale. We'll talk about some tips for safe use of devices, because certainly we know that not all schoolwork at home is going to be done on a computer. There's going to be iPads, Chromebooks, tablets, phones, you name it, they're probably using it. So we'll talk about some other devices and how we can mitigate some of those risks. We'll review, like I said, some kid-friendly stretches that will help to prevent postural problems down the road for your young one. And then lastly, I'll share some stress relieving tips. I mean, I can't imagine that you're stressed out. This is just such an easy transition of going to virtual school and, trying to work and, manage a household, whatever the case may be. So I can't imagine you're stressed, but if you are, I'll share some stress relieving tips, not only for you, but for your child as well, as we all get used to what this new school year is going to feel like. So I wanted to include this photo because certainly this one really spoke to me as I've looked around my own house and seen my own kids in this exact sad posture. And really this comes from use of devices in an improper way. So you can see this poor little guy, he's just checking out his iPad, and he's in a complete C-shaped curve. In fact, if to the left of his body we put 2 little eyeballs here, it's to the right of his body, put 2 little eyeballs, he's a frown face because his posture is so sad. This is one of the things that as a physical therapist plagues me, because I see in a young person this poor posture, and what I see is down the road what that looks like as that person becomes an adult, and more importantly, an advanced age adult. And I start to see how these postural problems that start at these early ages will carry through and become postural lifelong habits. So certainly you can imagine as this young man here is using his iPad, whether it's here on his bed or at a desk, this is going to put a significant amount of strain on his neck and his low back because of how far forward his head is in front of his body. In fact, they say for every degree that the head moves forward, it increases dramatically in the amount of poundage and weight because of the pull of gravity on that head. So this poor guy's little neck muscles are working so hard to hold his head up, and over time can become incredibly taxed and cause long-standing back and neck pain. Certainly, if left unchecked, postural habits like this can lead to scoliosis, which means a curved spine, and not curved in the correct way, but an S-shaped curve in the lateral way. This is what your pediatrician is testing for every time they have your child stand with their feet together and touch their toes. They're looking at the spine to see if there's evidence of a curve. Scoliosis is highly preventable in many cases, and with proper postural habits and stretching and exercise can be fully remedied if your child is already showing evidence of scoliosis. But really the main cause for that is having poor postural habits that are repeated on a regular basis, particularly like the one shown in this picture. You can imagine, because this young man is flexed so far forward, the muscles in the front part of his body start to shorten and tighten and cause a lot of tightness in that front part of his chest. That can limit things like breathing, as well as the ability to reach up overhead for things like sports, or even just, reaching up to grab the shampoo in the shower, whatever the case may be. So we want to make sure we mitigate some of that muscle tightness to allow the muscles to be flexible and do the job that they're supposed to do. Certainly, if you're in this position for a long enough period of time, and I encourage you to try this yourself, put yourself in a terribly slouched position and see how long you're able to stand that position before you start to feel fidgety, maybe can't concentrate anymore because you're starting to feel those aches and pains. And it can really have negative effects on the ability to concentrate and stay focused on whatever the task is that you're trying to complete. We talked about the breathing difficulty, primarily because of the tightness in the muscles, but also you can imagine when I scrunch forward, I've now squished my lungs and they're not able to expand within my rib cage. So for those children who have other breathing pathologies like asthma or allergies, being in this hunched over position is certainly going to make those issues even worse. Headaches are a big complaint for my young patients who spend a lot of time in this type of a position, because those muscles in the back of the neck and head are working so hard to hold the head up that they end up squeezing and tightening around some of the nerves that go up into the head. And also, certainly, we have that whole idea of screen time and how that influences headaches. So I would definitely recommend not only some postural adjustments, but some other tips, which we'll touch upon later on in the presentation. As someone holds this position, you can imagine there's really little muscle activity necessary. This person is essentially just hanging on their ligaments and their bones. So there isn't much happening in the way of muscle activity. So as a result, those muscles start to weaken and turn off. And we can see that that relates to decreased strength, particularly in the back muscles and shoulder blade muscles. These are really important muscles for helping to support both the legs and the arms, especially during higher level tasks like sports or running. So it's important that we make sure our young people don't have that pronounced weakness through the shoulder blade and back muscles, and that they maintain that strength to allow them to do other higher level tasks. And like I mentioned first, when I showed this picture, the reason this is most pertinent is because while you might think, whatever, it's just a half hour on the iPad, he's fine sitting like that, what we're teaching and reinforcing to that young person is that these postural habits are acceptable. And what happens is over time, those become ingrained in our bodies and in our minds as a habit that can eventually down the road lead to other significant issues. So many of my patients who are in their 30s, 40s, even 50s, I can ask them and question them about some of their postural habits way earlier on in their lives, and they're able to reference back and say, oh, yeah, I did, sit kind of like that, or I spent a lot of time sitting in a beanbag chair as a kid. So whatever the case may be, these are habits that can stick with us throughout life. So I feel it very important that we start to institute some good recommendations so our children can take ownership of moving that forward in a beneficial way. And however you choose to incentivize that would be based on your family's dynamics. So let's talk a little bit about that proper desk setup. And you see here, this is a photograph of a young person sitting at a desk, and it's very similar to the photograph I use when I teach older adults in workplace setup and show them how to sit at desks. So I was fortunate enough to find one where this was a younger person here. Really, the key elements of proper desk setup is you want to ensure 90-degree angles, or at least pretty close to 90-degree angles, which you'll see here in this photo. So the first thought is that you want to make sure your young person is sitting all the way back in the rear of their chair. And what that does is it allows the entire leg, the bottom of the leg, to be supported by the sitting surface. And it also moves the hips back so that the shoulders can stack directly on top of the hips. Out of all of the 90-degree angles, the one that's most critical is that hip angle. So making sure those shoulders are stacked right on top of the hips, forming a 90-degree angle at the hip joint. The other places where you want to look for those 90-degree angles are at the elbows and at the knees. And you can do that by modifying the sitting surface or the desk height surface. You'll see here in this photograph, the young man has his arms positioned and resting on an armrest, putting his elbows at about 100 degrees, which is acceptable. If you don't have a chair with armrests, which many people don't at home, you can certainly have your young person rest their arms on the table surface to allow their elbows to rest at 90 degrees. Not only does this provide some decreasing of weight of the upper body, which can strain the neck, but it also reduces the strain in the wrists and forearms if they're doing a lot of mouse work or typing. The other place to check for the 90 degrees is at the knees. And you'll see here in this photograph, we're at about 100 degrees. At about 80 degrees of knee flexion or knee bend, because the feet are just slightly forward, which is perfectly acceptable. But you want that person to be seated where the feet are supported on a surface that allows their knees to rest at about a 90-degree angle. If their legs are kind of dangling off of a chair that's too high, what happens is it can start to pull the hips forward and encourage that slouch position in the spine. So having those feet supported where their knees can stay at 90 degrees will allow them to stay anchored back in the chair and reduce some of that stress on their low back. If for some reason your chair is either too high or they're using a bar stool, have them prop their feet on something like a stool or an ottoman, maybe the footrest of the bar stool, so that again, their feet are supported underneath them. So 90 degrees is the first thing you want to look for. Second thing is to make sure that their back is supported. So I know in my own home, I'm trying to find 3 desk setups around my house, and we've gotten creative with how we've done that without having to completely make 100 Amazon orders. And at one of our desks, the chair is a slat back chair that doesn't align to 90 degrees, which means that as my son sits in it, he's kind of resting back against the chair. So in that situation, what I'm planning to do for him and what I would recommend for you is to take a beach towel or a pillow and prop it between the edge of the chair and your student's back so that it allows them to line up again with their shoulders stacked on top of their hips rather than slouched back against the back of the chair. So you can imagine if I had a backrest here and I put a towel or a pillow, it'll help bring my back forward over top of my hips to allow for that 90-degree angle. The reason this is so important is then I can be seated with a good postural alignment that keeps my head over my shoulders while completely relaxed. I don't have to sit upright and erect the whole time. I can actually lounge back against the back of that chair, but still have good postural alignment. So beach towel is great. A pillow is great. You can even, I don't want to say duct tape because you don't want to duct tape your furniture, but maybe like string wrap those around the chair so that they're not moving around as your student is learning. And that's a great way just to provide some additional comfort and postural support if you don't have a formal office chair like the one seated in or pictured in this position here on this picture here. Devices, we're going to have a lot of different devices this semester in terms of what the students are using. However, if they are using a monitor or a laptop, consider having that on a slightly raised surface so that it's just below eye level. So in many cases, our young people are using adult-sized desks, and the monitors are up too high. And what you'll see is that our students are sitting like this, looking at the monitor. So if that's the case, consider boosting your young person up on, some phone books or whatever, so that they're looking straight at the monitor. In contrast, if they have a tablet or they have a laptop that's sitting lower, consider raising that up so that they're not sitting there looking down at the device while they're learning. So you can use a stack of books to raise that up. You could consider connecting an external monitor if you happen to have one. So maybe you have an iPad that you wire to an external monitor or a laptop that you wire to an external monitor that you can adjust. Or consider using a device stand, which there's more than thousands of them to choose from at your local retailer. not specifically Amazon, but you could use an external stand to help support your device or laptop to raise it up just a hair. The combination of these recommendations, the goal is really to just ensure that your young person is sitting with those 90-degree angles, and so that their head is centered over top of their body and not too far forward or hanging down. And that allows them to sit comfortably and attend better to the educational material that's being either broadcasted live or through an asynchronous manner. So let's talk devices. I love this photo because what I was able to snag off the internet, God bless the internet, is these are actual photos from a classroom, 2 different classrooms. And if I move my little face out of the way here, what you'll see is in the top picture here, these students have their device just sitting flat right on the desktop surface. And you can see how forward bent their heads are over top of those devices. In fact, incredibly close to the device, which, as we talked about earlier, can lead to other things like headache and eye strain. In the bottom picture, what we see here is this classroom has implemented iPad stands. And these iPads now stand upright and are able to sit away from the students. So you see here that in these pictures, the students' heads are much more erect and stacked over their shoulders versus bent over the top of the device. So I felt like these 2 photos, in contrast, were able to highlight the points that I've made thus far in the presentation. So when we work with devices, we really want to assure that there isn't that bent neck syndrome, or text neck as they call it. And in order to do that, consider propping your device either up on a pillow on your student's lap, maybe on the table in front of them, or using one of those iPad or tablet devices. Because certainly as you raise the height of that device up into a more vertical orientation, it reduces the amount of forward bend that that student has to accommodate for to be able to see that device. So I really encourage my parents to take a look at the students using the device. Figure out, is there something I can do to prop this up? And it honestly could be just as simple as taking a pillow and having them prop the pillow on their lap and putting their hands with their device here versus putting the device down on their lap. That was my example of a headless horseman learning virtually. So certainly, propping that up on a pillow, putting it on the table, using a stand, those are going to be the best ways to help align that head over the shoulder. A couple other options here is, have your students stand. They can prop that device on the counter and maybe they can walk around or stand. All the rage right now in ergonomics in an office setting is a standing work desk. And as I was thinking about, this whole virtual learning for this upcoming year, I was kind of reminiscing on some of the recommendations that I make for my adults. And I thought, well, geez, this is exactly the same thing for kids. And probably even more so because kids are so fidgety and they need that kinesthetic proprioceptive learning in order for their brain to be able to focus, particularly boys more than girls. So our young men are going to struggle with a virtual platform where they have to stay seated, engaged in a monitor. So allow them to stand, allow them to walk around or shift side to side, or maybe consider some of the other upcoming tips, which I'll share with you on the next screen. If your young person insists on using the couch or their bed to be able to do their learning because they find it more comfortable, you can still work in that environment. Just try to prop something behind them to encourage them to sit more upright. So we saw in that picture of the young man on the first slide, how he was just kind of like hanging in space on his poor little spine. Rather than having them sit like that, maybe put them against the headboard of the bed, prop a pillow behind them, and tell them that they have to have their iPad up on a pillow while they're doing their learning from their bed. So, definitely some options. Whenever you think of what should I do in this situation, just come back to those ideas of 90 degrees and having the head on top of the body, not forward. So whatever you can do to mitigate that alignment, those poor alignment problems will be beneficial. So there's certainly plenty of options. But keep in mind, the easiest one is a device stand or propping up on a pillow. Okay, some general tips, and there's one that I haven't added on here, which I'm going to add in verbally. So the first is allow your student to get up and change positions throughout the day while they're learning. So again, particularly boys greater than girls, they need that kinesthetic awareness and that kinesthetic movement to allow them to focus. There's a very clear relationship between the body movement and the ability for the brain to stay focused on tasks. For those of you that have boys at home, like myself, you know that your house is probably in a constant state of movement. And while that that may be rather aggravating as a mother or father, know that that's how boys are learning to integrate their systems and sensory systems. That's not to say that girls don't do that, but there is often a higher reliance for boys to have that movement happening all the time in order for their brains to attend well. So allow them to change positions, allow them to stand, encourage them to take breaks between their synchronous and asynchronous learning to get up and move and run and do something kinesthetic, because that will allow their brain to quiet and stay more focused as they go back into that didactic learning. Get creative with chairs. So I love this photo here. This little boy is sitting on an exercise ball at his work desk. Certainly this is in a classroom setting, but that's not to say you couldn't do that at home. And in fact, at our school district, several of the grades have implemented balls for chairs. So, grab an exercise ball, your yoga ball, have them sit on that, have them sit on a milk carton, something just different so that they can change their posture throughout the day. They can kneel. They can stand, get creative with how they're sitting and what chairs they're using, because again, that variability of the body and allowing it to move and experience different sensations is certainly going to help mitigate any long-term postural changes. We talked about it already, but try standing. Prop it up on a countertop, let them walk around, let them stand, because it's going to not only allow them to move a little bit, but it's going to get them out of that forward flexed hunched position while they're learning. Take breaks. We highlighted this with the moving around part of it, but their brains aren't going to be meant to sit in front of a monitor all day long. In fact, most adults can't handle sitting in front of a monitor all day long. So it's really important when there are some opportunities to take a little break from screen time and allow them to run around the house, run around in the yard, get out on the balcony, take a breath of fresh air, whatever your home situation is, encourage them to take that little bit of screen time break so that they get not only the movement piece of it, but they get a little break from the blue light of the screen. Before we get into stretching, the one that I didn't include on this tips screen, which I am really highly passionate about and want to spread the word about, is there is lots of research out there indicating that blue light exposure, which comes from things like cell phones, smartphones, and tablets, can cause long-term macular degeneration in the eye. So essentially what that means is that it breaks down a portion of the eye, which can in long term lead to visual loss in the central portion of the eye. To mitigate that, I highly recommend that our students, as well as adults, pick up a pair of blue light blocking glasses. These are available at many different retailers and are very inexpensive. And just encourage your young person to wear their blue light glasses when they're gaming or when they're attending virtual school. I bought these last year for my boys when we shifted to virtual in the spring, and I thought I was going to get a bunch of pushback, but they actually kind of dug it. They come in all different colors. They look so darn cute when they have their big glasses on, and they were really good about wearing them. And what I found was that when they did wear them, they were able to attend for longer periods of time because they weren't as fatigued in the eyes. So I do highly recommend blue light blocking glasses for both young people. And if you happen to have an occupation yourself that requires a lot of screen time, grab a set. I have a pair that I carry in my work bag, and I wear all the time when I'm working in front of the computer, especially at night, to help reduce my risk for macular degeneration down the road. And just a special note for adults as well as kids, you can have that anti-blue light blocking put right into your prescription glasses. If you do wear prescription glasses, they can put that right into your lens as well. And then the last tip is to really encourage your young person to stretch. And on the next slide, I've highlighted 4 of my favorite stretches for young people. These are easy to do, They feel great, and you can incorporate them a lot of different ways into your daily routine. So I'll kind of highlight these from the top left. First is the hamstring stretch. You see here, this little girl has her one leg kind of tucked in next to her, and the other leg is straight out, and she's reaching down towards her foot. That's more of a traditional kind of runner style hamstring stretch. You can also do this with both legs straight out, reaching down towards the toes, just really emphasizing that when you have your young person doing that when they have their legs out in front of them and they reach forward, you want to encourage them to keep their chest up, not go down into that already hunched position. So by just kind of leaning forward, I'm getting that nice stretch in the back of the legs. Ways that you can implement this into a daily routine so that it's not like, hey, go do your stretches. Encourage them to watch a show or play a game in that position, that long sit position where their legs are straight out in front of them. That way they are getting that stretch while they're just kind of sitting, hanging out. Maybe have them put their back up against the back of the couch and stretch their legs straight out in front of them. As you stay in that bent position with the knees bent, the back of those hamstrings can get really tight, particularly if your child is going through a growth spurt. Because what we see then is that the bones are growing really quickly, and it takes a lot longer for the muscles to stretch. So now that our kids are spending more time sitting, have them actively work on stretching the back part of their legs to mitigate any of those types of issues. Second stretch here is a spinal stretch. This is a great one to do in between sessions, synchronous, asynchronous. They can hop on the floor, hug a leg in, and do a little twist. If that seems too complicated for your young one, just have them twist themselves sitting in their chairs. If I'm at my desk, my monitor's in front of me, or my device is in front of me, I can just kind of twist myself, look over my one shoulder, or twist the other leg, look over the other shoulder. Just having that kind of work, twisting side to side, is going to help to loosen up that spinal column so that they don't have that hunched over tight spine. Next one, I love this one. Oh, look, I went out of order. This is called the bow stretch. It's where you lay on your belly, you reach back, you grab your feet, and you come up like you're Superman. This is a great one for kids. I know adults look at this and they're like, no, thank you. But kids are so flexible. And what I love about this stretch is it's the exact opposite of sitting in a chair hunched over a device. So if you can imagine, if I'm sitting at a chair and I'm hunched over my device, my hips are bent, my chest is bent, my head is forward, and I'm kind of slouched. Well, that bow stretch is beautiful because it's going to take everything and reverse it. It's going to extend my hips, extend my chest, extend my head, and open up the whole front part of my body. So it's exactly reversing all of the postural tightness that we get when we hunch over a computer. For those of you that are adults that look at that pose and are like, there's no way in heck I could do that, you can do a simple version of that by just reversing and arching backwards with your arms apart. And that's going to help to open up that chest. If you do that in standing in a lunge, you'll get that same hip benefit as well. And then the last one, a side bend. This is very common in yoga. It's common in 1980s fitness videos. It's the traditional side bend. What I love about this is it's going to open up the sides of the body, keep that rib cage limber, and move those shoulders. So you can do this just like it's photographed here in the photograph, or you can have them press their arms up overhead, get that nice big shoulder stretch, and now list over to one side. You're going to feel that really opens up the whole side body, which is fantastic for breathing, but also just to keep that upper body limber since it's been so static for so long. The traditional recommendation for stretches is to hold for about 15 to 30 seconds in anybody under the age of 60. That's kind of tough for a kid to sit there and count to 60 or count to 30 or count to 15. So I actually looked this up. Who would have guessed that Google knew the answer to this? But how long is it to sing the ABCs? Well, it's exactly 29 seconds. So if you have them sing the ABCs while they're in that position, you've hit that 30-second mark. If you have another tune that you like better, you just sub that right on in. Maybe like a little watermelon sugar with some stretching. I think that could work. But the main idea here is you need to let their bodies move, and these 4 stretches will hit most of the major muscle groups that are going to be tightened as a result of prolonged sitting or hunching over a device. So certainly sprinkling in some of these throughout the day creatively, or maybe just with like a little checkoff sheet with a reward, whatever works in your family. This is a great way for you to encourage them to not sit in those poor postures for long periods of time. All right, stress management, topic near and dear to everyone's heart as a result of the epic year of 2020. So certainly, as an adult in this time, there's a lot of stressors, whether they're work-related, home-related, safety-related. Certainly, there's a lot that's weighing on everyone's mind. But keep in mind, those same stressors are also trickling down and affecting our children, who now have lost a lot of their social outlet by having to be away from friends in a virtual setting. So, I've seen this in my own children over the course of the past 6 months. I'm sure many of you out there have seen it as well. And, as stewards of their well-being, it's important that we not only acknowledge that stress, but offer some solutions to help them manage these difficult emotions during this time. So first recommendation, both for you and for them, take a deep breath, breathe. It's a lot what's happening right now. And what happens is when people get stressed and anxious, they start to breathe really shallow in their upper chest, and they forget to take big and slow inhalations and exhalations. As a result of those shallow, stiff breaths, what happens is our spine places increased pressure between our shoulder blades on the two nerve bundles that can help to raise our fight or flight response. So not only does it act as a compensatory mechanism, but it actually triggers a cycle of increased stress. So all those times your Apple Watch says take a deep breath and you snooze it and blow it off, take a deep breath. Because really doing that nice process of a big inhalation and a very full and slow exhalation is not only going to give your body excellent oxygen to the brain, but it's also going to decompress that nerve bundle in between your shoulder blades to help lower your overall stress level. This is important for our kids as well. A lot of people think, oh, well, gosh, my kid's breathing all day long. They're running around the backyard. But sometimes it's important to just have them take a couple slow, deep, long breaths, and you'll be amazed at how quickly it will de-escalate their stress level. Exercise. As a physical therapist, of course, I can't leave that out. And not only am I doing that because it's my job, but it's because it's true. Because when we exercise, we release endorphins. Endorphins are very similar in nature to medications that mitigate depression and anxiety. They make us feel good. They offer a euphoric sensation, which helps in return to lower cortisol levels and reduce overall stress. So people think, well, geez, how the heck can I exercise? I'm home all the time with my kids. I can't get to the gym. It's been closed, or I don't want to work out in a mask. See what you can do to figure out some fun activities that everybody can participate in. Go for a hike, do a little bike ride, play some sports in the backyard or on your balcony, whatever the case may be. And if you're at a loss, there's plenty of kid and adult-friendly video workouts available via live streaming on either YouTube or Amazon or whatever your network of choice might be. Certainly, Action Potential has put out a variety of different kid and adult-friendly exercises, which are broadcasted on our YouTube page. My favorite, particularly, are the kid-friendly exercises. I did them with my 3 kids. So together, the 4 of us put on a series of exercise programs that are really fun and engaging, and always end with a little tiny meditation at the end. So there are other resources available. If you do a little Google search or a YouTube search for kid-friendly exercises, you'll find there's plenty of them out there. It's a nice way to help kind of lift the overall mood, and maybe a nice way to offset some phys ed that may not be occurring in a virtual setting. Meditate. People are always say to me, gosh, Kristen, don't go woo-woo on me. I can't meditate. That's something that's not for me. And I used to think the same exact thing until I tried it. Meditation is not something that is difficult or extraordinarily hard to do. These are 3 of my favorite apps that are free: Calm, Insight Timer, and Headspace. They each offer programs specific for children and then also for adults for stress management. My kids, which I thought for sure, for those that don't know me, I have 3 boys, 11, 9, and 6. Super active household. Very into sports, pretty much like wild dudes. I can get all 3 of them to sit and do a 15-minute meditation. So I'll pop on one of the apps, go to the kid-friendly section, put on a 15-minute meditation. Everybody's got to chill, whether it's sitting in their bed, laying on the floor. They can do whatever they want during it, but they just kind of have to chill. And it's gotten to the point where my boys will be like, hey, can we do a meditation? Because they recognize how calming it is for them to just slow down for a couple minutes. And maybe it seems crazy to others to try this with their children, but I encourage you at least try it once or twice. And if nothing else, put it on in the background and the kids will start to get used to what's happening, and then you'll notice that they'll start to calm down. So a great way from an adult perspective and a kid perspective to just slow the hamster wheel that's racing in the mind, and that certainly helps to mitigate stress. And then the last one, kind of a combination of exercise and meditation, is yoga. These are two of the most common kid-friendly yoga programs that are available on Amazon Video for free. Cosmic Kids Yoga and Poser Kids. These are for younger age children. I'll be honest, I haven't done either one of these because my kids are pretty cool about yoga and they'll just do whatever I do. But these ones are geared towards kids and are in kind of like fun little settings and have a little storyline associated with them. But this is a nice way to incorporate some meditation and focus into some fun exercise for the kids as well as stretching. So certainly some options here for stress management. Out of all of them, the most important is to breathe. Okay, take a deep breath. This is hard. No one is, no one is thriving in this environment right now. We've got to just figure out how best to do this and do the best we can with the tools that we have. So take that deep breath, be easy on yourself, and know that you're not alone. So in conclusion, setting up that desk for your young person is certainly going to help to reduce distraction and discomfort. If they're in an environment where they have to use a tablet or a phone or some other type of device, try to prop that upwards so that they're not hunched over the top of it. And it will certainly help reduce pain, as well as, most importantly, prevent future postural dysfunction down the road. Consider some of those daily stretches, sprinkling them in. It'll help to keep your young person limber and keep them breathing well as preventing any kind of postural problems. Use some of those stress relieving tips by breathing, meditating, exercising, yoga to help decompress, because being in that state of stress and cortisol certainly can lead to other negative health issues down the road. So we need to offer our bodies an ample opportunity to decompress when possible. You know, the biggest message here is we are here to help. We recognize very intimately that this is a difficult time for people, particularly trying to manage home environment, school environment, work environment, all balled up into one environment. So if there are things that you need help with, we can provide that. We've got plenty of resources available on our website, on our YouTube page, on our Facebook channel. All of them are free and they're available for you to help set up an environment or help mitigate any kind of pain that you're having, whether it's in you personally or your young person. And if all else fails, reach out. We would happily converse over email, a virtual session, an in-person session to help you problem solve any solutions to issues that you may be having. And please reach out with questions. We're here as a resource to the community to help not only our older adults succeed, but also our young persons who are the future of our community. As a special thank you, please check out reachyours.com/school. On there, we have a summary of some back-to-school survival tips, as well as that will enter you into an automation that will provide you with some of the resources that I highlighted along the way, namely our blog for desk setup, some links for the exercise programs for the kid-friendly exercise, and other great tips that you can sprinkle into the semester to help make it a much easier transition for both you and your children. So with that being said, my heart goes out to all of you parents. I totally understand where you are. I wish you the best of luck in this upcoming semester, and certainly ask that you reach out if there's anything that we can help you with, as we are here as a resource for you. So take care and happy learning.